I've worked a lot of night shifts in my life. Gas stations, warehouses, a morgue once for about 3 weeks before I quit. But nothing prepared me for the 11 nights I spent as a security guard at Elmwood Care Home. Because on the 7th night, I found a room that wasn't supposed to exist, and on the 11th night, something inside it finally noticed me back. If you've ever felt like a building was watching you breathe, you're going to want to hear this one all the way through, because the ending changes everything I just told you. My name doesn't matter. What matters is that 6 months ago, I was broke, freshly divorced, sleeping on my brother's couch, and desperate enough to take a job nobody else wanted. Elmwood Care Home sat at the edge of a small town in upstate New York, a converted Victorian-era hospital that had been repurposed 3 times since the 1920s. Asylum, tuberculosis ward. Now, a nursing home for the elderly with nowhere else to go. The pay was almost double minimum wage. That should have told me something. My job was simple on paper. Walk the halls from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. Check that the exterior doors were locked. Make sure none of the residents wandered, and log anything unusual in a notebook that had been used by every guard before me going back years. I flipped through it on my first night out of boredom. Most entries were mundane. 3:14 a.m. Mrs. Halloway out of bed again, walked her back. Generator tested, working. But every few pages, in different handwriting, the same phrase kept showing up, underlined, sometimes circled twice. Do not go to the East Wing after midnight. No explanation, no context, just that sentence, repeated by at least 4 different guards across 4 different years. I asked the day supervisor about it. She laughed it off. Said the East Wing had been closed since a fire in the 90s, structurally unsound, off limits for insurance reasons. Kids used to sneak in to scare each other, she said. Ignore the notebook. Old guards get bored and start writing spooky stuff for the next guy. That made sense, mostly. For the first 6 nights, nothing happened. I did my rounds, drank bad coffee, listened to podcasts. The residents were kind, mostly asleep, occasionally confused about where they were. Routine. On night 7, I heard something I couldn't explain. It was 1:47 a.m. I remember because I checked my radio out of instinct, when I heard what sounded like a wheelchair rolling down a hallway. Slow, deliberate, one wheel squeaking in rhythm. I followed the sound down the west corridor, past the residents' rooms, past the nurses' station, until it led me to a door I'd never noticed before. It was in the East Wing, the wing that was supposedly sealed off, boarded, structurally condemned. The door wasn't boarded. It wasn't even locked. I want to be clear. I almost didn't go in. Every rule I'd been given said don't. But the sound had stopped right at that door, and something about the silence afterward felt worse than the noise had. Like whatever made it was now waiting on the other side, listening to see if I'd follow. I pushed the door open. The hallway inside was untouched by time. No fire damage, no collapsed ceiling, just rows of old hospital beds, still made, still dressed in yellowed linens, dust thick enough to muffle my footsteps. And at the far end, one door stood slightly ajar, light flickering behind it, even though I knew for a fact this wing had no working electricity. I should have turned around. I didn't. Inside that last room was a single hospital bed, and sitting on the edge of it, facing away from me, was a figure in an old hospital gown. Its shoulders were moving, slow, rhythmic, like it was rocking or laughing silently. I said, "Hello?" My voice cracked on the word. The figure stopped moving, completely, like a video paused mid-frame. Then it turned its head, not its body, just its head, a full 180 degrees, and looked at me with eyes that had no pupils, just white, milky, clouded white, like boiled eggs. I ran. I didn't stop until I was back at the guard desk with the lights on and my hand shaking too hard to hold my coffee. I told myself it was a resident, someone with dementia who'd wandered from another wing, disoriented, playing some kind of horrifying trick of the light. I almost convinced myself of that. Until I checked the resident logs the next morning, every single resident was accounted for, every bed occupied. No one matching that description had ever lived at Elmwood. Not according to any record I could find. So I did what anyone with an internet connection does. I searched the property's history. Turns out, in 1963, before it was a care home, before the fire, Elmwood was a long-term psychiatric ward. And in that East Wing specifically, there'd been a patient. Records only referred to him as Patient 14, who was restrained there for 11 years after allegedly killing 3 orderlies with his bare hands. The official cause of his death in 1974 was recorded as unknown, found in bed. He was buried in an unmarked grave behind the property. The same property I was now walking alone every night for 8 hours at a time. Nights 8 through 10, I avoided the East Wing entirely. I told myself I'd finish my contract, collect my last paycheck, and never come back. But the notebook, the one full of warnings, started making a horrible kind of sense to me. And something had changed after that night. The temperature in the west hallway dropped every night around 1:47 a.m., exactly when I'd heard that wheelchair. The residents started reporting nightmares, all of them, on the same nights, describing the same thing. A man standing at the foot of their bed, watching, not moving, until they blinked and he was gone. On night 10, Mrs. Halloway grabbed my wrist as I did my rounds. Her grip was stronger than I expected for a woman her age. She looked at me with complete clarity, more lucid than I'd ever seen her, and said, "He's counting the guards now. You're the 11th. I asked her what she meant. She just closed her eyes and went back to sleep like she'd never said it at all. Night 11, I decided I needed answers. I went back to the East Wing, against every instinct I had, because I couldn't work another shift not knowing what was actually happening in that building. I brought a flashlight this time, a crucifix I found in the chapel closet, not because I'm religious, but because I was desperate, and my phone, recording the whole way. The room was exactly as I'd left it. Empty bed, flickering light with no power source. But this time, there was something new, scratched into the wall above the headboard, fresh, the wood pale and splintered like it had just been carved. "You're the 11th. You don't leave." I turned to run, and the door slammed shut on its own. The temperature dropped so fast I could see my breath. And behind me, low and wet and far too close, a voice that didn't sound like it came from a throat at all whispered, "10 before you left. None of them made it home." I'm not going to tell you exactly how I got out of that room, partly because I still don't fully understand it myself, and partly because some things are better left vague for your sake and mine. What I will tell you is this. I never went back to Elmwood. I never collected my last paycheck. And when I tried to call the front desk 2 weeks later to ask about my final check, the number was disconnected. When I drove past the building out of morbid curiosity, it was boarded up completely, condemned, according to a sign nailed to the gate, pending demolition, dated a full year before I'd ever worked there. I still have the notebook. I took it with me that last night without thinking. And 2 nights ago, for the first time since I quit, I opened it again. There's a new entry at the very bottom in handwriting that looks exactly like mine. I don't remember writing it. It says, 12th guard starts Monday. Someone needs to warn them. If you're watching this, and you've ever worked somewhere that felt like it was watching you back, I'd genuinely like to hear about it. Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. And if you enjoyed this story, there's another one I haven't told anyone yet about the basement they never let me see the keys to. Might make that video next. Let me know below if you want to hear it.